Yes, this is Mr. Binzi, and today's RE lesson is Scripture and Science. Now, if we are able to harmonize both of these powerful sources of knowledge, couldn't it lead us more to the truth? What do you think? I want to ask a couple of questions. Can something come from nothing? That's a question that science has to grapple with. Is there evidence for intelligent design in the universe? I'm going to give you a quote from Einstein. He says, "Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind." Now, you might wonder why did he say that, or you might have an interpretation of that yourself. Another quote: "Our knowledge is vastly outstripped by our ignorance." So there's so much more to learn. It reminds me of a quote. It says, "Have we scratched the surface yet?" Talking about the knowledge of the universe. That's from Job 26 verse 14. Many people only believe in what they can see. What about 95% of the universe that's invisible? Such substance like dark matter that we cannot see. We believe in that? Well, in this topic today, I want to touch on a few areas. Not an expert in any of them, but I want to touch on a few areas like physics, astronomy, cosmology, biogeochemical, zoology, geology, genetics, neuroscience. Now let's start with astronomy and cosmology. Now, in 1927, scientists realized the universe had a very small, dense beginning, a singularity. Astronomer Sir Bernard Lovell, he said, "We cannot avoid this key issue. If at some point in the past, the universe was once a close to a singular state of infinitely small size and infinite density, we have to ask, what was there before and what was outside the universe? We have to face the problem of a beginning." See? So this is science grappling with this question. Now, scientists, they some hypothesize that a universe existed before the Big Bang. Many believe in extraterrestrial beings. But another good question here is found in Scripture, where it says, "Where were you when I founded the earth, or when the earth began? Tell me if you think you understand." Job 38 verse 4. So yeah, there are many unanswered questions regarding the universe. Now, science estimates that the universe is 13.8 billion years. Now, in the Genesis account, the universe existed before the 7 days began on Earth. And the question is, how long is a day? Now, in Genesis, a day is an epoch, an unspecified length of time. For example, if you look at Genesis chapter 2 verse 4, it says, "In the history of the heavens and the earth, in the time they were created, in the day that God made heaven and earth." So the word day here is applied to the entire time period of the heaven and the earth. That's just an example there of a day being used in different ways. So there's magnificent pictures of the universe. They call it the stargazing live pictures, where you've got the Big Bang, inflation, then you've got galaxies, expansion of the universe, and you've got planets, Milky Ways, and so on. Now, thinking about the universe, there's an equation, very famous one, by Einstein's E equals mc squared. Now, in simple terms, it's talking about energy converted into matter. Okay, so energy was required. Scientists say that energy produced the universe. Now, can scripture harmonize with the thought about energy needed? Well, in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 26, referring to the universe and the stars in the heavens, it talks about vast dynamic energy was needed. That's in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 26. And also, the scripture has always said in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning. So this harmonizes with what science realized from 1927, that the universe had a beginning. Now, what about the Earth, inflation and expansion? The scientists describe the Earth expanding. In Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22 says, he is stretching out the heavens like a fine gauze. It's interesting, isn't it? It's just describing like a black velvet canopy above us. Now, what about all these stars? If we try to understand, or scientists try to help us understand all these stars, they said if you multiply the number of stars in a typical galaxy, which is 100 billion in a typical galaxy, by the number of galaxies in the universe, which is said to be 2 trillion, the number is mind-blowing. It says there are approximately 200 billion stars in the universe. For example, Andromeda, a dwarf galaxy, roughly has 1 trillion stars. And Godzilla, a galaxy, has 100 trillion suns. Now, can scripture harmonize with this phenomenal number? In Genesis chapter 22, verse 17, it says, the stars of the heavens are like grains of sand on a seashore. Now, how did Moses, who wrote this, illustrate this so well when he would not have a clue of the immense amount of stars in the universe, just using the naked eye, looking up at the sky? Now, let's think about what is more magnificent than the number of stars is the laws that govern, that direct these stars. Yeah, we talk about the laws of the universe, don't we? You know, galaxy clusters are moved by the law of gravity. They perform like a cosmic choreographed ballet or an orchestrated symphony. This is a quote taken from Astronomy magazine. It said it's like a web-like pattern, the entire universe. This pattern is alluded to in scripture, harmonizing. It says there, tie the ropes of the Orion constellation, laws governing the universe, or laws governing the heavens. That's in Job chapter 38, verse 31 and 33. Now, again, thinking about these laws, scientists have found over 200 parameters needed for life and humans to exist in this universe on the Earth. For example, think about the distance from the Sun. The Earth is 93 million miles from the Sun. Now, if it was a bit closer or a bit further away, it'd be too hot or too cold, and they would not have the wonderful water system that we have that's so vital for life. Yeah, we just seem to be in just the right location. Another example, we are in the Goldilocks zone, scientists call it. Why do they call it that? So the position of the Earth in the Milky Way is just right. That expression from the story that Goldilocks used. It's far from the major spiral arms, if you think about our Milky Way and the spirals. Those spiral arms are busy places, galaxies and planets and stars. And then the risk of gravity pull from these other stars be greater. Sorry, not galaxies, because we are the Milky Way galaxy, aren't we? So it's the stars. But the Earth is a scripture from the Psalms that shows that harmonizes with this thought of being in the perfect position. It says the Earth he has given to the sons of men. That's Psalms 115 verse 16. It's just perfect for us as humans. Now, all stars and planets, they differ. This was hypothesized in the 1600s and proved in the 1800s. Now, can Scripture harmonize with this idea? It says here in Scripture, the glory of the sun is one sort, and the glory of the moon is another, and the glory of the stars is another. In fact, one star differs from another star in glory. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 41. Now this harmonizes with the idea of all these different stars, different glory and shape and power and size. Now, the human eye cannot detect all these things. What about the order of events? Now, thinking about the Earth, the major stages in this order is there was at the beginning, there was a primitive Earth in darkness, enshrouded in heavy gases and water. Then there was light on the third period. On the fourth period, there's an expanse of atmosphere, so separating the waters from above to the waters down below. On the fifth period, large areas of dry land appeared. In the sixth period, land plants appeared. And in the seventh period, you had the sun, the moon and the stars are discernible in the expanse. In the eighth period, you have sea monsters. Interesting that the scripture uses the word monsters. Might come back to that. In the ninth period, you got wild and tame animals, land beasts. And in the 10th period, you got the humans. So this order of events from the Genesis account harmonizes with how science describes the events, the order of events, how things unfold on Earth. Now, we did talk about a day can be millions of years. That was in Genesis chapter 2 verse 4, wasn't it? So these long periods are like epochs, unspecified periods. Now thinking about our planet Earth, again that question we had earlier, where were you when I founded the Earth? No one was there in the beginning, so we cannot be dogmatic about our ideas, theories, and our knowledge is always growing. Now, it talks about the planet Earth being, scientists estimate the planet Earth being 4.6 billion years old. Now, it's interesting there, in Genesis it talks about the Earth was formless and waste. That's in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. So we know that the Earth existed a long period of time, even before the created days started to be counted. What about the Earth's core or crust? Well, the description here is like socket pedestals, much thicker than under continents, mountain ranges and oceans, that push deep into the underlying mantle like tree roots into soil. This is from Popman's Geology quote. So all of Earth's layers press inward upon Earth's core from all directions, making it a great cornerstone of support. Now, is there any scripture to harmonize this description? Here's a quote here. Into what were its pedestals sunk, or who laid its cornerstone? Job 38 verse 6. Another quote, he established the earth on its foundations. It will not be moved from its place forever and ever. Psalm 104 verse 5. So this idea of cornerstone is harmonized between science and scripture. Now, what happens when the continental plates, they collide? Now, they create mountains, don't they? Scientific explanation of that. Now, there's a quote, it says, you covered it with deep waters as with a garment. The water stood above the mountains. Mountains ascended and valleys descended to the place you established for them. Describing here the mountains, isn't it? Again, harmonizing with science. This is from Psalm 104 verse 6 and verse 8. Now, thinking about our wonderful planet again, and how it's protected, how we're protected, because the Earth is surrounded by this magnetic shield, making life possible. Okay, this is one of the 200 plus parameters needed for life. Again, this shield kind of reflects the idea that the Earth was given to the sons of men. Psalms 115. And have a quote here we're going to come back to. It says, I see your heavens and the stars that you have prepared with mortal man in mind. When the sun hits the magnetic shield, we have solar flares. When they hit the magnetic field, we have the aurora lights or the northern lights that occur when that happens. What about the Earth's shape and the gravity that we understand? Unless you're part of the flat Earth society in theory. But it says, but astronauts, they thrill to see and photograph the Earth as it looms large through the windows of a spacecraft. That's the best part of flying in space. That's a quote. Now, in 732 BC, the scriptures talks about the globe of the earth. That's Isaiah chapter 40, verse 22. That harmonizes, doesn't it, with how we understand the shape of the earth to be. In 1500 BC, it talks about hanging the earth on nothing. This is Job 26, verse 7. Now, if you think about the strange ideas about the shape of the earth in ancient times, strange ideas of how the earth was kept up, propped up by gigantic animals and various creatures. But the scripture here does not reflect any of these ancient theories. It says just simple statements that harmonize with science today. The shape of the earth and the earth suspended in space. Now we know it to be gravity. What about the oceans? The oceans, currents. In Psalms, it calls them the paths of the sea. Psalms 8, verse 8. Now, Matthew Maury, 1806 to 1873, he's considered to be the father of oceanography. Again, and he described paths of the sea, how they harmonize. Now think about our water cycle. In school, they might call it precipitation, which is one part of the cycle. Precipitation, then the collection, when it pools of water or bodies of water. Evaporation, when it is brought up into gas form. Condensation, forms as clouds, and then precipitation, falling as rain. Now, the scripture harmonizes with this. It says he draws up the drops of water. They condense into rain from his mist. Then the clouds pour it down. That's Job 36, verse 27 and 28. Yes, we have the wonderful seasons, as mentioned there in Genesis 1:14. Luminaries serve as signs for seasons. What about this area of geology and fossils? Now, we know that there are so many creatures that exist on this earth. And as we mentioned earlier, there's a scripture there in Genesis 1:24. It uses the word great sea creatures or monsters. Okay, so this allows for the idea of these gigantic creatures such as dinosaurs, doesn't it? So again, there can be some sort of harmony there between scripture and science. Now, looking at the fossil record, the fossil record also harmonizes with scripture, because the fossil record, it has these groups of creatures, such as the jellyfish, the amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, all these different types or kinds of animals. Now in Genesis chapter 1, 20:26, it talks about every creature according to their kind. See, so far, and we're not going to find any more major fossils, are we, to change the picture that we have so far. But so far it's saying that they're just kinds, different kinds of animals, and this is in harmony with scripture. Now, if you think about the time period when all these kinds arrived, is called the Cambrian stage. Now, scientists describe the narrow period when creatures appeared as this Cambrian explosion. If you was to illustrate it in a timeline, if you have a football field, perhaps, of the Earth's beginning, and you start from one end of the football field or football pitch, if you make your way all the way down to the other end, just before the penalty spot, there's a thin line of the Cambrian explosion. Just goes to show you that there was no gradual events or no gradual development of these animals. It was an explosion, sudden appearance, according to this timeline. This harmonizes with scripture. And yes, so there are countless billions and trillions of fossils that point more to unique animals. So the question is, why has no one yet observed an animal evolving into another? How long will this court case be held open for scientists to find the missing links? That's a question students might want to discuss. Let's look at chemistry. Now, scientists say that we are made of stardust. This is exciting, isn't it? All the elements of Earth. So every atom in your body was made in a star. Our DNA, the atoms of oxygen in our lungs, carbon in our muscles, calcium in our bones, iron in our blood, was created in a star before the Earth was born. That's mind-blowing, isn't it? Now, again, it reminds us of this verse. I see your heavens and the moon and the stars that you have prepared with mortal man in mind. Psalm chapter 8, verse 3 and 4. It says here that God went on to form the man out of dust from the ground, the elements. So you can see that scripture and science harmonizes here with regards to the elements of life of our body. If you think about the period table of elements, I think there are 118, to double check that. And if you look at all these elements, they are different according to their numerical order, based on the structure of the atom and the number of protons. So that wonderful picture of an atom and the protons in the center vary slightly for each element. In the scripture, it talks about order. Yeah, that's in 1 Corinthians 14:33. Yes, we see lots of order. What about biology and genetics? Well, think about the wonderful DNA. Some people call it the book of life. Question is, who wrote it? Now it says, written in our DNA is all the building instructions for the human body. Now here's a quote. Your eyes even saw me as an embryo. All its parts were written in your book. Psalm 139, verse 16. Again here, scripture and science are harmonizing with the description of this book of life. Now, there are many cycles and patterns that harmonize between the earth and our body. Our entire body is like a clock, time machine, a rhythmic seasonal phenomena. Where I even think about this pattern of 7. We see this cycle in many different ways, but the pattern there is discernible. Healthy blood is 7.3 pH level. Then you have the pattern of the week. You have the Sabbath pattern, that's in scripture, 7 days. Even had the farmers who let the land rest on the 7th year. 7 colours make up the rainbow. Every 7 years, our cells are replaced in the body. Talks about milk teeth that come after about the age of 7. Puberty, roughly the age of 14, multiple of 7. Menopause, roughly the age of 49, 7 times 7. The monthly menstruation, 28 days, 4 times 7. So this pattern of 7 is also in scripture, where if someone was sick, it said, examine the person with a disease after being quarantined every 7 days. That's in Leviticus 13, verse 50. And in the 7th year, there should be a Sabbath of complete rest for the land. Leviticus 25:4. Yes, these patterns there. And there's a harmony between scripture and science. Yes, and the body has been healing itself for thousands of years before doctors came along. That healing pattern also happens in a pattern of 7. Doctors know that and they use that. Now, what about the psychological part of our healing? Now, scientists call it this placebo effect, where positive thinking is a factor in our healing outcome. And some medicines, it's hard for them to even get a certificate because they have to make sure the placebo effect is not involved in the healing process or the major factor. Now, this healing process is mentioned in scripture. It says that a joyful heart is good medicine. That's in Proverbs 17:27. And many people know that being positive is good for us with regards to our overall health. And what about when we die? What happens to us when we die? Now, a scientific word might be called decomposition, or we might say decomposed. Yeah, it's the process by which dead organic substances are broken down into simpler organic or inorganic matter, such as carbon dioxide, water, simple sugars, mineral salts, breaking down back into the earth. The scripture harmonise with this, where it says there, in the sweat of your face you will eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken, for dust you are, to dust you will return. Genesis chapter 3, verse 19. So again, looking at psychology, we mentioned there about a joyful heart is good medicine. Touched on that. And let's move on to neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity. That's a mouthful, isn't it? We can end this on this topic here. But the neuron body holds info. Dendrites extend and venture. Synapses connects info. New dendrites form and with new info. But here's a quote here. It says, we are the architects of the brain. The mind can change the brain. The capacity of neurons and neural networks in the brain to change how their circuits are wired, the connections, and our behavior. We have seen many examples of people's behavior changing, maybe dramatic examples of someone going into prison, then coming out with a more spiritual outlook, a change of life. Now, does scripture harmonise with this? It says we should be transformed by making our mind over. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. And the Greek word here used for transformed, is metamorpho. The English word would be metamorphosis, like a caterpillar into a butterfly. Now the scripture here is talking about the mind having the ability to change. So this all harmonizes. So in conclusion, is there evidence for intelligent design? Is there evidence the Bible and science harmonize? What resonates with you, that we came from a lower life form or from a higher intelligence, a loving creator of life? Science without religion is lame. It cannot walk down the path of love, spirituality, and existential questions. Another mouthful. The why questions. Religion without science is blind. It cannot see how scripture and science harmonizes as a beautiful picture of universal truth. So thank you. That was today's RE lesson, and hope to see you again soon.